Okay, last episode we successfully built a heated bed for just $5 total, but to my dismay it never reached the 120 degrees I was aiming for, instead leveling out at just 94 degrees due to my undersized power supply. Today we're going to make a simple insulation for it using common materials anyone might have laying around, like packaging foam, corrugated cardboard, that sort of stuff, to see how many more degrees I can squeeze out of this bed heater while also reducing impact on the environment from wasted heat. Let's get cracking! I'll put a layer of aluminum foil on top of the cap done shiny side down, being very careful to have it clear the screws that are serving as electrical contacts. While this will reflect some infrared radiation, it'll mostly get hot itself and primarily serve to improve heat distribution across the surface. In case you're wondering why the foil seems slightly sticky, it's because I covered it in an ever so slight dusting of spray adhesive to make it stick. In the middle goes the thermistor, stuck down with another square of foil amply coated in spray adhesive and a piece of Kapton to prevent it from tearing. Now for the first layer of oh, did I even mention it's going to be a multi-layered insulation? Because it's chronic Mechatronic you're watching, and I like to overcomplicate things whenever possible. So yeah, the first layer of insulation would ideally be cork. And even though we do happen to have an entire roll of it sitting around, I don't think many people will. Plus, it's pretty expensive, which kind of defeats the purpose of having a super cheap heated bed in the first place, so we're going to be really stingy and use something else. Actually, I'm going to steal some felt from my mom, but if your mom isn't into sewing, an old cotton towel should do just as well. The purpose of this layer is to be in contact with the full heat and take the edge of it so the insulating foam that comes next doesn't get as close to melting. On top of the felt, I'm going to put a layer of this. Now don't ask me what it's called, where it's from, nor what it's used for. I have no idea. Our neighbor gave it to us. He used to work all sorts of industrial jobs. But it's basically a plastic foil with a very thin film of aluminum deposited onto it. So you can probably just use tin foil instead, but I'm using this since it's way easier to work with. Of course, the shiny side goes down, or rather toward the heating element, since this layer is in fact supposed to reflect infrared radiation, although to be honest, I'm not entirely sure the way I'm applying it here is correct. I don't really have a good grasp on thermodynamics, I'm just interpolating from what I see elsewhere, a bit like ChatGPT. But I'm sure people will correct me in the comments should I do it wrong. While this could probably be used as a standalone insulation in and of its own, should you be running out of space underneath your print bed, I have plenty of space left, so I'll keep stacking on layers to save as much energy on heating as possible, and hopefully squeeze out a few more degrees of max temperature. For the foam, I have three choices: leftovers of the stuff you put underneath laminate flooring for sound deadening and insulation, generic styrofoam, and polyethylene packaging foam. In a torture test pouring boiling hot water over each of them, the styrofoam basically didn't change at all, other than bending a little bit, while the polyethylene foam, despite its glass transition temperature of about 20 degrees higher than that of polystyrene, ironically saw the most change, with bubbles damaged and deflated in a few places. The laminate flooring underlay, on the other hand, didn't budge at all. It's still perfectly fine. A simple flame test, however, got the styrofoam burning away almost violently, which I guess was to be expected, and the green stuff actually did almost as bad, even though I suspect it has some flame retardant in it. But the fact it smelled exactly like burning polystyrene makes that less of a surprise. It must just be a different kind of styrofoam. The packaging foam was a lot better, melting more than actually burning with a visible flame. What does that mean for my heated bed? It means I apparently got glass transition temperature and melting point mixed up in a sloppy Google search earlier. It appears polyethylene with its glass transition temperature of -100 Celsius is doomed to an internal state of gumminess unless you melt it at +120 degrees, whereas polystyrene is always below its glass transition temperature of +100 C and only starts to melt at around 240 degrees. That's why polystyrene as a plastic is quite quite brittle as opposed to polyethylene and polypropylene, which in turn nicely matches the results I got with my torture test. So based on that, I'm going to use one layer of the flooring stuff, but because it's thin and kind of dense and the polyethylene feels more insulating, I'm going to top it off with 2 or 3 layers of the packaging foam. To close it up, we'll put another layer of shiny foil on it to reject even more infrared radiation. Now, to keep everything from falling apart, which it inevitably will if I don't do anything about it, I could just mount the HDF template I used to cut out the foam, which would work fine, but I could also use corrugated cardboard instead, which itself has insulating properties, and I would be crazy to pass those up. After all, you can never have enough insulation, right? A fun quirk of this specific piece of cardboard is that it's slightly bent, like concave. So by mounting it, it'll not only be flattened, but in doing so, it'll push down on the foam in the center of the bed, whereas with a flat plate being mounted at the corners only, it'll tend to bulge out over time. Lacking an elegant solution to attach it, I ended up making a bunch of metal brackets that go over the bed leveling screws and get held down with another nut. However, because my bed leveling screws are electrically connected to the heating element, I need to put a layer of Kapton on the inside of those brackets, otherwise if any 2 of them were to touch the reflective foil, which is conductive on one side simultaneously, it would short out the heating element. And as you can imagine, that would not be good. So these brackets simply hold down the cardboard inside those cutout corners, which also prevents it from sliding sideways in any direction. Considering this was the simple solution I managed to come up with, it turned out quite elegant after all, and I'm really happy with it. Now, mounting this on the carriage, some of you might remember a slight problem I had, where the print bed would slide around on the carriage despite the springs being tensioned almost all the way. And the reason for this is primarily that I drilled those holes to fit 5mm screws, but then ended up using 4mm bed leveling screws. Talk about planning things through! Someone in the comments suggested using the longer springs and counterboring them into the MDF, and although I didn't think it would solve the sliding issue, I now basically raise the entire print bed like a truck by adding that second nut, which does take away some of my maximum print height, but by lowering the springs, I could partially undo it, so that's exactly what we're gonna do. Congrats to whoever suggested this, even though you seem to have deleted your comment. It's apparently quite hard to suggest something that actually gets implemented on my channel. And because I cannot be bothered to completely remove the Y carriage in order to put it on the drill press, a simple drill guide will have to do. And now we successfully made it worse. Oh well, it's my fault for listening to ideas in the comments. The reason this didn't work is because my holes were 5.5mm to begin with, and I counterbored them to 6mm, but the springs are only 5.6mm in diameter, so they did what a spring does and flexed, and got themselves stuck in the smaller hole. And because the spacing of the screws on the glass is not exactly the same as the spacing of the holes in the MDF, the threads of those screws are contacting the inside of the spring, partially jamming it. And that's why I originally put washers underneath those springs, to prevent them from falling into the hole. So we're back to the old springs. I prefer my blade sliding around to the leveling not working properly. Now we're ready to try it out. But before we do so, there is a disclaimer I have to include. This insulation is obviously made from flammable materials, so if your bed heater is capable of going above 150 degrees Celsius when powered permanently, use this insulation at your own risk. If your MOSFETs were to fail, and a 500 watt heater got stuck on without other redundant safety measures in place, this insulation is likely going to cause a fire. My heated bed is physically incapable of even reaching the boiling point of water without insulation, so it's safe to assume it'll never reach critical temperatures. Furthermore, there's a smoke alarm directly above where this printer is going to live, and someone's always in the house able to react to emergencies. Now let's see how much hotter this heated bed gets with insulation. Currently sitting at 19.1 degrees. Let's plug it in. And we're off. This time you're getting a time lapse because last time you didn't. Looks like things are heating up quite rapidly and we're going to reach 60 degrees pretty soon. There we are. That only took 3 minutes and 30 seconds. A respectable time indeed, given it previously took 5 minutes to reach 65 degrees. I'm actually pretty surprised none of you guys asked me how long this took to fully heat up, but even if you're not interested, let me tell you, it took over half an hour to completely level out. Now it seems we're crossing those 94°C within just under 10 minutes. And before anyone feels the need to tell me, yes, I know, mounting an infrared thermometer above a heat source is not a way to get accurate measurements over an extended period of time because convection is going to heat up the sensor and skew the measurements. In fact, that's exactly what's happening right now. I can tell you in hindsight, it never reached 110 Celsius, but it sure looks promising on this time lapse. And yeah, the sensor on this thing heating up may have skewed our measurements quite dramatically because now it's pretending we have 37 degrees in here, which I cannot confirm even though I'm wearing a shirt. It's more like 19 degrees. At least it said it was 19 degrees before.
A few moments later.
Okay, I just pulled it out of the fridge for cooling down. We're now reading quite low at 15 degrees, which means we're gonna get a much more accurate reading. Let's see what it is. And it is indeed over 100 degrees. Well, it may not have been 115 degrees, which may have been a little generous, but at least we did cross the 100 degree mark. And as for structural integrity, the aluminum did get a few wrinkles, which, although expected, is a little bit unfortunate because it may lead to less good heat distribution on the surface. Everything did delaminate somewhat due to the spray adhesive abandoning its primary purpose, and the cardboard is sagging quite significantly due to the intense heat. No, it's really not intense, but there are clearly a few improvements still to be made on this insulation. Other than that, it is lukewarm on the underside at best. So I'm really happy with that. Reaching 60 degrees in just 3.5 minutes, that's totally acceptable. And there we have it. From 94 to about 104 degrees, we did get a 10-degree increase, and insulating this heated bed was definitely worth it. I mean, it's never worth not insulating a heated bed because you're just wasting energy otherwise. I hope you enjoyed. Huge thanks to all patrons, including the newest one, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!